My name is Gregor MacDonald. Right now, I'm a senior student at UMass Amherst studying psychology. Today, I have a very special conversation I want to bring to you. I had the opportunity and the pleasure to sit down with hometown legend Peter Newland. Peter is the lead singer in a band called FAT. Now, when Peter and I first sat down and talked, we talked about how, with all of his creations, not just music, they would come from his heart. And if they didn't come from his heart, it would not be the best material he could create. This talk here goes deep into the psychology of autonomous living in the sense of doing what we want to do, not what others want us to do, not what we imagine others want us to do, but what we want to do coming from our heart. Now, what I find so inspiring about this conversation is the real and raw aspect that Peter brings to the table through his life story. I think that we only touched the tip of the iceberg of Peter's story. And with that said, Peter's actually creating a book, and I'll keep you updated on that. But essentially, he talks about how life is not always how we make it out to be. And we are given a gift, and we are only promised that gift, nothing more, nothing less. I'll let Peter explain exactly what that means. I hope you enjoy the time you have with Peter and I. We will talk soon. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Peter Newland. I use my middle initial. I'm a musician and a songwriter and a novelist now. Working on my first novel. I use my middle initial when I'm doing my music and entertainment stuff. Peter J. Newland. I'm 77 years old, was born August 10th, 1948. And was the perfect time to be alive. You know, I was 15 when the Stones hit, you know. And and I bring that up because I began to play music about 4 or 5 years earlier, it's sort of in the folk mode when Bob Dylan, you know, a little earlier than Bob Dylan. My sister was in college, and she was bringing home music by the Peter, Paul, and Mary and the Kingston Trio, and then when Dylan hit, it was like it just set me on fire, and so I was playing folk music, and then I heard the English bands, and then I was off and running. So that's really been the focus of my life ever since. And we were lucky, kind of. I mean, because we had a record deal very early on. My mother knew a banker in New York who's had a client who was a producer. His name was Eddie Jason at the time. That was a stage name, but his name was Ed Germano, and he ended up being like the biggest impresario in terms of recording studios.
Wow.
He went on to own the Hit Factory and the record plant. But anyway, he was plugged in, and he, you know, we were what, 19, 20. I met most of the guys in the band at Holyoke Community College. My first semester there. And he heard these tapes that we made in West Springfield at the Passionist Monastery. There was a radio station down there in that A-frame, you know, the place I'm talking about.
You were on it.
And so my friend was working there. I know what he was doing, but they had a recording studio. Like this was, you know, mid '60s, well, late '60s, but it was 2-track. And we just went down and made this recording, and then my mother sent it up to this guy, and the next thing you know, I got limos pulling into my yard, and we're in the washroom. You know, but the one thing that I maintained when I started this band was that I wanted to write original music. I was not interested. I'd done a few years in cover bands, and I was never interested. I mean, if I like songs, I like to interpret them and play them. But when I heard the radio, I wanted to be on the radio. And when I went to a concert, I wanted to be on stage. And so I knew that the only way to do that was to create your own music. So around here at that time was much like it is now, where most people were playing, and now it's tribute bands, but there were cover bands back then.
Right.
And that's where the money was, and there were dress codes and all that sort of stuff. And we subscribed to, that sort of Rolling Stones, you know, whatever that approach or whatever you call it, you know, a little irreverence, you know. We grew our hair long, and we couldn't get work because all the clubs, you know, you had to be all cleaned up and wearing the same shirt or something like that, and playing. Of course, you had to play all the hits. So I remember what I think is when the music scene, what's left of it now, started. It was a place on Chestnut Street called the Downtown Lounge, and I was thinking, there was a bunch of clubs called the Hullabaloo Club and all these, you know, kind of franchisey type places, and nobody would give us the time of day. So I started looking for places that were empty, you know, and I walked. This guy Nicky Giamarino, the Merchant Marine, owned this place. Great guy. We ended up being best friends. I walk in, I see this guy mopping the floor, and I go, "Is the owner here?" And he goes, "What am I, chopped liver? Who do you think I am?" He's got a mop in one hand. He was always cleaning, and I said, "This place is empty." And he goes, "You know, I'll change my words." I don't know where you are with that, but he goes, "No kidding." He looked around. I said, "What if I set my band up in the corner, and we'll make, you know, back then it was ridiculous. It was 50 cents at the door, and you got a bunch of people to sell, you know, booze to." And he said, "Okay, we'll do that." And that started. And then there was another band up north called Clean Living who did the same thing at a place called the Meadows, which later turned into the Rusty Nail, which was one of the biggest clubs on the East Coast, and they did the same thing.
But it started empty as the Meadows.
It did, but it started with the concept of guerrilla capitalism, which is, you know, if you're not going to if they won't let you plug into the revenue stream, then go out and create your own. You know, find the place that has all the elements, put them together. And I mean, within a year, so we couldn't get bands in the beginning. We couldn't get gigs in the beginning because we played original music. Within a year, you couldn't get a gig if you were in a cover band. You got laughed out of the place. And there were 30 clubs in the early 70s around here, you know, between, you know, Northampton, Greenfield, and Enfield, you know, that had bands every weekend, you know, 2 or 3 nights a week, if not more. And they had cover charges, and people paid them, you know. And there was a thriving music scene that came out of that one act, which was, if I can't get it here, I'm going to go make it someplace else. And we got 2 record deals, and plus we recorded an independent record, and I'll go through some of that if you want me to. And Clean Living got a record deal, a major deal out of this, and you know, it's interesting because, you know, a lot of time has passed, and I went to Nashville to write music and kind of got out of the rock star business. You know, I lost, my hair fell out, and I gained 20 pounds. You know, and you know, and it's really a young person's game. It's ridiculous. I mean, well, it's not ridiculous, but the fact is that, you know, some of these entertainers are 12, 13 years old.
That's right.
But that's just the way. Don't take this as like a bitch session. That's just the way it goes, and I think you have to go with that, especially getting older. You know what I mean? It's like I love ageism. I don't think it's good, but I like it because it screws everybody equally. You know?
That's right.
It really doesn't pick out a color or nationality or an ethnicity, or, you know, you're old, you're out. And so, I still keep that mentality as, okay, so I'm out there, but where can I go, you know, and find a place to continue to do this. But you know, the Rusty Nail rebuilt and built an incredibly, you know, beautiful large club that ended up being one of the best clubs on the East Coast. All the major bands started coming through here, and there was a great tradition of original music here. You know, we had our last deal with Atlantic in the 80s, but I would say into the 90s, and then it's just sort of dwindled off. And so when I think was what I was aiming at. When I came back, I went to New Orleans for a while, and then I went to Nashville for 10 years. And when I came home, I was surprised to see that the emphasis had gone so, number one, had gone so far off of originality and creativity. And great players here, always great players, great bands, but everybody's playing, or, and in this case, you're picking a band to be like, and you're going out and acting and playing all that band's material. And
Right.
it's good stuff, and it's great. It's good entertainment. But it's not the originality that started this music scene. And the other thing I think that's happened is that people have lost the sense of the value of music. You got people who will pay $15 for a beer that someone made in their garage, but they won't pay $2 or $3 for a cover charge to get in to see an original band, and that always kind of broke my heart, And I've been working as best I can as an old guy, and to try to breathe some life into that part of it. But back to the timeline. So we got to deal with RCA Records. I think the band had only been together for about a year when that happened, which is pretty rare. And then we recorded an album, and we were getting ready to record our second album, and we recorded a couple things happened. The brass changed the first thing that happened was that they really tried to, our producer was really into David Cassidy and Bobby Sherman and the Osmonds. I don't know, you probably don't even recognize, but they were all these the Brady Bunch type music. You know the other Brady Bunches?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So he was into that whole thing, and it was like we were not.
That's right.
We were alternative dudes in every sense of the word. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Wait, can we step back real quick, because
Sure.
You said you got into music maybe 11 years old.
Yeah, somewhere around there. I
Somewhere
first
around.
started playing, and then I played my first gigs probably when I was sophomore or junior in high school.
In high school. So then who introduced you to music?
Well, the first guy that introduced me to music was my mother was a very religious person. She had 6 boys, and she wanted them all to be priests, and that didn't work out as planned.
Yeah.
But there were always these seminarians. You know what a seminarian is? It's the seminary. It's like where you go to study to be a priest. And so these guys would come and visit. We had a big farm out in Munson, which is where I was raised. And these guys would always come and visit. And one day, some guy walked in the door with a guitar, and I was like, over.
Done deal.
and I got a funny story on that. So my mother was really determined that I become a priest, and I got connected with a family here in the West Springfield named the Mangini family, and they had 2 boys, Jimmy Mangini and Danny Mangini, and our mothers were into the whole Catholic thing, so they decided to send us off to a retreat, which is one of these places where you pray and meditate and you talk with priests and stuff, and you hopefully you what they say, receive your calling. God tells you.
Was this like a multiple day retreat?
I think it was.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure. Yeah, I think it was 2 or 3 days.
Gotcha.
Anyway, after dinner, the first night, they said, we have a special treat for you. The seminarians have formed a rock band that plays this religious music. And so.
Interesting. That's a crazy wish.
So we walk in and go. We were like hanging out, smoking cigarettes and stuff in the back anyway. We walk in and go, hey. So I go home. God bless my mother, who I love so much and who gave me so much of my creativity and fed me art and music and everything. I go home and I go, Ma, I received my calling. And she goes, you did? I go, yeah, I want to be a rock star. And the look on her face. And so Jimmy was the oldie guy, the older brother, and he was working and had some money, and he bought the equipment, and he bought a minivan, so I started my first band with mostly the guys from the West Side, called the Ragged Edge, which was the first band was a cover band.
That was with Jimmy and his brother?
Yeah, with Jimmy and his brother, and Craig LaChapelle on bass and Steve Bushy on drums. And that band kind of led into a couple of other bands, but then I left that band pretty quickly because I wanted to play original music. But I just think that's the coolest story. It was like, I mean, if that's what that place was for you to find out what you wanted to do. I got a message from someone loud and clear. It's good. Like this was custom made by God to go, hey, the priest thing, I'm not so sure. This is what you're meant to do.
Did your other 5 brothers become priests?
No.
No? None of them?
No, but that's a whole other story.
I gotcha.
No, that's a whole other story. Nobody went into the priesthood or the nunnery, as we say. So.
Well, that's good. That's a crazy way to be introduced to what your passion.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And then you turned around 12 years old, 11 years old, and you mentioned that you met your bands in college.
Yeah.
But then your first concerts were in high school. So that was with Jimmy?
No, that was Fat. So okay. My big claim to fame. So that first band was the Ragged Edge. That was a high school band. You know, and that was a cover band, and we did a lot of high schools and stuff around here. And then I left that band. The years get a little screwed. I probably left that band in '67 maybe, and I got into another band around here pretty quickly. And then I used to hitchhike from Munson to Holyoke to practice with this band. And so I hitchhiked over there one Saturday, and they were about to kick me out of the band. They didn't tell me until I got to Holyoke. I would say, why don't you guys just call me? I would have stayed home. So they called me. They tell me, Pete, we've decided we're going to change format. Or they were acting like the Young Rascals, and they wanted to act like another band, and had different personnel.
Okay.
So they told me they were kicking me, they were dumping me.
So you understood, though.
What?
You understood, though. You said, all right, I understand. I don't even want to do that.
No, it hurts. I mean, it's like anything. You get kicked off the team. You know what I'm saying? Right. So they didn't give me a ride home, but they gave me a ride to the Pike over near Westover, and the National Guard was going on maneuvers that week. So here I am in my long hair. Right. And I know it was going to be 8 or 9 o'clock at night. These guys are rolling out.
That is insane.
And I'm thumbing. I've done the Mass Pike, and I was like, 3,000 Jeeps roll by, full of GIs giving me the finger and calling me like dirty names. So, anyway. But then very shortly thereafter, I met Michael Benson at Holy Community College, and then that started pretty quickly, and that was, I would say, 68, 69. 68, actually 68. So when you felt that, and obviously it hurt, but when you felt that, what were your actionable steps that you took after that? You said there was, I still feel the same way. I'm nothing, show me. It's the same thing as my first gig with Nikki. It's like, if I can't work here, then I'm going to just keep pushing until I find a place to go.
Right.
Because for me, and I've done a lot of therapy and a lot of inner work and that sort of thing. I think there are probably some neurological, malfunctions at play here in me that make me do the things that I want to do, that I do. But I've never ever, after when I was in Nashville and I got my first divorce, I was flat broke, and I got a job at Dell Computer, and I rose quickly through the ranks, and I just wanted to make some money to get back to writing and playing music again. And they offered me a job at Dell in middle management, and I just said, I don't want it. I mean, so at 47, with no college degree, I had a shot to go big corporate, and I just said, even then, and I had enough money to kind of fall back on. I had a little Social Security coming in. I want to play. I want to write, period. Until I, can't do it anymore. And I think one of the problems that I always had was, that's admirable, and you sit there and it sounds cool. It's not very sensible,
That's right.
And one of my first big mistakes was being mad at people that weren't as crazy as I was, when it really did make sense. Anybody in their right mind wouldn't have done what I did. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I finally had to come to grips with that and say, And I've met, believe me, I got a handful of dead enders. I got a handful of people that feel the way that I did, and that I do. And so now, that's why I'm writing this novel, and the novel is built so that it's built around songs that I've written about things that happened that I write about in the novel, and my whole thing now is, that the Taylor Swift, who's the guy from anyway, the music business, quote unquote, that door's locked to me, and understandably so. I'm a 77-year-old man in a business where the average age of the artist is 15. The average age of the executive is 25. So I can't really complain. That makes sense. I wouldn't want to listen to my grandfather when I was a teenage kid. So,
Right.
So for me, the thing was, well, there certainly are other areas. First of all, I think that when you really begin to go through this, is the only thing I can equate it to is sort of a prolonged midlife crisis. You really want to do something really bad, and it's just there's nowhere to place it.
It sounds like it started young too. You talked about midlife crisis, but it sounded like it started.
Well,
younger.
I'm not saying that it was actually a midlife. I'm saying it's equivalent to that sort of thing. Where
Right.
It's that
Right.
kind
Absolutely.
That's that kind of frustration. But then I finally understood that. Look, the essential act of creating and making music or writing lyrics or writing a novel or whatever that is, it really has nothing to do with anybody else, period. It has to do with me and what I want to do. And so the first joy that I think one thing that I really got backwards in this process was, especially when you were young during that era, or even now, you look at the money, you look at the girls, you look at the cars, the houses, the adulation, right? And you lose sight of what the thing is. You're just going after the stuff that the thing gets you if you're lucky. And throughout that process, thank God that I, didn't do serious damage to myself. I stayed well enough and I lived long enough to understand that what this is really about is the joy of creating. And that's the only thing. And if you're, it could be a blessing or a curse depending on how you look at it. But if you get that, I consider myself to be very fortunate. But that's all that's given, promised. You're not promised that you're going to be rich and famous and be surrounded by beautiful women and live in luxurious places. You're given this simple thing that you can do that somebody else hears, if you're lucky, and it makes them feel good. It stimulates them. And if that person isn't there, the thing that I finally realized is nobody derives more joy out of my music than I do. So that in and of itself should be, and for me, is enough.
So do you think that success is to latch onto the creativity, the joy of creation, rather than material or anything else, or
No, I don't think that one precludes the other, but I think that and once again, none of this. I had that burning desire, and so regardless of what happened, one of the things that I think often is it's probably a good thing that I didn't get too much too soon, because I was out of control. My appetites really could get the best of me, and I have friends, people I know, and people I just like to hear that are not alive, that no longer want to write, because they're burned out, that are physically incapable of doing those things. So sometimes I wonder, in terms of being an artist, if maybe there wasn't some elements of my lack of success that were good. Because I'm 77 and I'm singing as well as I ever did, and I'm writing better than I ever did. And one of the things, so to go back to this whole idea of why do you do it, right? And when you finally come around to the fact that I'm going to do this regardless, and I'm going to do it because I love it. First of all, I'm going to do it because I can't stop. It's like a habit, it's like a, condition. But then the obscurity, at first feels like rejection, and in some ways you want acceptance. Everybody does. That's why I go to the grocery store. You're approved. That's it. I didn't really need this food. I just needed the approval, right? I feel better. I'm going to get on with my day.
That's right.
But there are gifts that obscurity and lack of success bring you, and that's time to deal with your own level of excellence. To really go, okay, what are you really trying to do here? Are you, and sometimes it's a mix, but are you trying to please that person? Or do you have an idea of what you want to express? And are you happy with how well you're doing that? It's like an athlete, I love tennis, and I watch it all the time. Bjorn Borg was the greatest clay tennis court player in the world. And everybody said he could play fast surfaces. So he went home for a year, and he learned to serve and volley on grass, and he changed. He went through a metamorphosis, and he became even greater, and became the greatest tennis player of his time. So you have this time to say, well, to be perfectly honest, there are things about the first several things that I recorded, and some of the only things I have, that I'm not happy with. Yeah, we made a record and was on a big label, and people like it. But when I heard it, I wanted it to be better. And so one of the things that obscurity gives you is time. As long as you can, you get through that, and as long as you have a place to, once it gets better, it's nice to have a place to show somebody the better thing. But you finally have time to to focus on those things rather than trying to be famous, rather than trying to, get a record deal, rather than trying to, get a bigger audience or that sort of thing. You're just thinking about the essence of the thing that you're doing, and you're learning, and you're taking in, and you're looking at that and thinking about different ways to do that same thing, and you have time to perfect the process or move toward perfection.
Well, at the beginning of that time, though, don't you get into a point where you say, oh, where is my fame? Where is my success? Where's,
I almost killed myself in that period of time. I really did. I'm writing a book about that now because so to continue we had a deal in RCA, and then we lost that in about a year and a half because the brass changed at RCA, and all of that happens a lot. When new guys come in, they bring in their own people. But we wrote a song about Vietnam. We had a really beautiful ballad called Still Water that we wrote about Nixon in Vietnam, and sort of the lies that were being told about that war at that time. And when that was the final. I don't think straw that broke the camel. It should be like cinder block that broke. I mean, a straw isn't big enough to break a camel's back. That was a cinder block that broke the camel's back, and so we lost that deal. So perfect example. So now I lost my record deal, and so now I can't get a record deal. So I said, okay, let's start our own label and make our own record. So that's the way that I roll. So we released Footloose in '75, which was years before most anybody in the country did what they call an indie record. We went back to New York. We found some of the people in the studio that we worked in, and we moonlighted the studio. They would work on the weekends and stuff like that. And we recorded Footloose. And my whole goal was to create our own record, and then to sell enough of that record to then go to somebody and go, look, we got this record. It's our stuff. We've sold a bunch of them, and that's why you should sign us. And it worked. So we caught our record in '75. We sold it in Springfield, Pittsfield, Worcester, some in Boston, some in Hartford, And then I bribed my way into the back room at the Springfield Civic Center. I gave a guy from Grinder Switch a gram of Coke, and he gave me his backstage pass.
Awesome.
and I walked in, and Shelley Finkel, who Kopic and Finkel were, they had already had they had a band called I can't get started on this. Anyway, they had
Big Timers.
What?
Big Timers.
Yeah, and I saw him in this. He was in the office, and I walked in. He goes, "You're not supposed to be here." I'm calling security. I go, "Well, here's my record. I sold it in 5 different markets, and I left." And he called me like 2 or 3 weeks later and said, "I want to sign your band because you proved to me that you weren't just a hometown band. You've sold this song. It's already been random sampled in 5 different markets." So they signed us, huge deal, and they got us signed to Atlantic Records at Criteria Studios, where Clapton had just walked out of there. The Allman Brothers, the Bee Gees were there when we were there, and we got signed by Ahmet Ertegun and Jerry Wexler, who were the biggest names in the business. So in 10 years, I worked my way all the way back up to where I was before, and it was better. And then, basically, I was signed, sealed, and delivered. I was at the top with the top team you could ever put together, and they were basically saying it's a go. And he told me, he said, "We're going after the Stones with you guys. We're taking rock and roll back from the British." And within 6 months, mostly because of financial, we signed our deal in the biggest quarter of the music business, and the quarter in which we signed our deal was the worst, and the bottom fell out of the music business, and I lost that deal.
Wow, what a roller coaster.
Well, and that completely shattered me.
Right.
And there were other issues at play with me psychologically and emotionally that I was completely unaware of. But the combination of those 2 things sent me into a downward spiral. That was fueled by alcohol and drugs that was self-destructive. And during that period of time, I was living in Asheville, Massachusetts, and I met this old guy, and that was when they were deinstitutionalizing the mental institutions. They were taking the patients, they were putting them out into the community, and they'd put 17 of these people in Asheville, and there was a little old man up there who started, and we played a free concert at the town hall up there, and there's a little old man who heard it, and he was one of these people. He was a patient from Belchertown, and he kept he was stalking me, going, "I want to be in your band. I want to be in your band." And I was really you wouldn't want to know me back then. I mean, I didn't want to know myself. And he was just bugging the crap out of me. And finally, and I'm writing, that's what this novel's about. And finally, he weaseled his way in, and I ended up taking it with me. And we became best friends, and everybody thought that I was really being nice to this old mental patient. And what was really happening was he was saving my life. He was showing me that what you lost compared to what I lost is nothing. I spent my whole life in there, and I'm okay with life. You can't be a rock star. Wah. Who can? And in the process, he showed me my self-pity, my bitterness, my resentment, and what my own actions were doing to myself and my life.
And he was doing that purposefully?
No. I don't know.
That's what I thought.
I don't think he did. No. It was just a thing. So I end up going back to New York 3 years ago. And when I left Dell and I turned down that offer, I took a bunch of my money and I just did what I did, and I had no idea what I was going to do with it. I knew I was too old for the business. I even took a couple of meetings and had people say it to my face, but I knew it already. But I love to record, so I went down and I spent $100,000 doing what I love to do. And when I got through, I mean, most of us just sitting there now. And when I got through, I called this guy, the same guy that I'd broken into the Civic Center. He had gone on to manage more heavyweight boxers than anybody in the history of the world. He managed Tyson, Holyfield.
Wow.
Yeah, and he was a big-time boxing promoter. But I knew him, and he was in the business, and he had a lot of money, and he would take my business. So I went down there, and I asked him the same question. He goes, he said, I hope you didn't drag me out here to ask me that. He said, 77-year-old man, you're never going to get a record deal. I said, yeah, I know. But we had a conversation much like this. And when I told him this story, he said, now that is a story that people will relate to and buy. He said, if you write that, maybe I'll help you out, whatever.
Right.
But he said you better get working, because how old are you? He goes. So, yeah.
What a story, man. Well, you said you were really on the down and outs. What I'm wondering is, because I know that a lot of people definitely feel that uncomfortability where you want to do something, but it's just not working out. Where's my success? Like, what steps did you take within yourself? Were you waking up in the morning at a certain time? Were you doing none of that? And you just were like, look, I'm original. I got philosophy in my mind where I want to do what I want to do. And
well,
then
for the first, until I met this guy, because then I put together a really good band, and then that one fell apart. So it was just like getting kicked in the teeth, relatively speaking. The thing that I learned from Gordon was, suck it up, dude. You're trying to do something. It's like you're pissed off because you walked into MGM, and you played the Wheel of Fortune and you didn't make $1 million. I said, nobody, who does? In the odds the odds under perfect circumstances to get what you want out of what you were trying to do are like, what are they? There's
almost
$1 million to 1. Yeah, there's 1 million jobs. There's 3 openings. But there was something else going on in my life, around that. It was as if I needed that, not just to be cool and not just to be rich and not just to be successful. But I needed that to be me. Then that was where the problem lay, and I didn't know who I was. It was a 12-year project, to look at it, and I was trying to do it for the wrong reasons. And like I said, when the light came on and I finally understood, through my interaction with this old man, that look, it wasn't like God talked to me in that way, but I got this, the understanding unfolded and said, you have a gift, and it's the gift of music. And it was given to you. So somehow it was given to you. But that's all. So he said, if you get lucky and if everything goes right and you make a lot of money, great, good for you. You know what I mean? And you get to buy a Lamborghini and a bill in the south of France, fabulous. But that was not in the original deal. That had nothing to do with the deal. The deal was, we give you this, and that's it. And to finally understand, first of all, that I'd lost sight of that completely. And I wasn't, I was mostly trying to be a rock star, thinking of what I was going to wear and where I was going to live and who I was going to hang out with and all this. And so that stuff can really get in the way. Look at P. Diddy. Look at that thing.
Yeah.
I want to talk about out of control, not that I'm anywhere on that level, but my God, so the simplicity of it all. But during this period of time, I was mad because I was looking forward to an opportunity to tell the world, look who, how do you like me now? Look who's on top now. And that disappeared, and it was just that's a wrong reason to do, I think. A lot of people you can get a long way on that whole shtick.
Right.
I know a lot of people, that's their whole thing. And people love it and they buy it and they do whatever. But for me, as a purpose in life, as a basis for doing things, you know, once I saw it in that light, it's not. But that's where I was stuck. I was stuck with somebody who was desperate to do that for those reasons, and then all of a sudden I got this close. I mean, my hand was on it, and they went, "Oops, sorry." Then it went away, and then I was left with a vacuum. And in that vacuum, you know, I just began to self-destruct. And then I am fortunate to have had this epiphany happen. And then you start, and then you understand and say, okay. And you play because you like it, you know. And then, oh, the cool thing is that the day that it happened, I had not been playing. We kind of missed a step here because after the band broke up, the three guys quit almost immediately. So I didn't have a band.
Like right after it fell through.
Yeah, as soon as they were gone. And for a long time I was really upset about that. But then I realized what I said to you before. It's like, hey, you know, this one guy was in for 12 years. I mean, what do you want? You know?
Yeah, yeah.
But then almost overnight I put together a really badass band. It was the band I always wanted. And then one of the kids, you know.
Well, how'd you do that? Did you reach out to people you knew?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, my drive to do this and finding the right people. But I don't even know if fate was just kicking me in the nuts one more time, because I don't, you know, it's kind of funny in this whole process. A lot of times things happen when you're a creative person that you didn't really do, and you never understand how they happened. Sometimes it's magic, sometimes it's luck, whatever it is. But within a month, I met a guy named Peter Newland, a bass player, the baddest guy. Guy was just like me, exactly. You know, the guy I was looking for. Those are the guys I wanted to be with. Michael Benson, who was the first guy I met to put Fat together, a different type of individual. He wasn't a type A, you know, but he was a massive talent, and he was in for the long haul. And then we found a drummer, but he had some issues, and his family was not very happy about it. And the next thing I knew, he was gone, and then that thing fell apart, and then I was done. And so your answer is that first period is just not pretty. You know, it's not. And you know, I know people that, you know, you name it, they did it. You know, whether they did it whether they killed themselves on purpose, or they died because they were abusing themselves so badly, or whatever it is, or alienated themselves from everybody in the world. And
right, that's
and then this whole little story happened, and so I'm sitting in the house, even after I've known this guy for a while, you know, drinking, you know, full of self-pity, full of bitterness and resentment. And this guy knocks on the door, and he goes, they just built a barn, post and beam barn, you know, like one of these barns with no nails or anything, just a beautiful work of art. And he goes, yeah, we're having a barn warming, you know, on Sunday or whatever. And they said, we were wondering if you'd come up and play some music. Because I think the old guy had said something about it to them. You should have Peter come up with the band, which was now me and him on a pair of bongos, which he couldn't play. One of the other things you learn is you do learn who your real friends are during a period of time like that. And I was lucky to have a handful of people that were just, you know, I wasn't the boy on the burning deck. I was one of the boys on the burning deck. But anyway, I just got rid of the guy, and then I thought about it, and so I just said, screw this. Something spoke to me and said, go up there. So I went up there with one guitar and my pal on the bongos. And I'm playing, you know, some Bob Dylan tunes and some folk tunes and some of my tunes. And this guy comes up to me, older guy, and he says, do you know the Tennessee Waltz? I was dancing with my darling to the Tennessee Waltz when an old friend I happened to see. I introduced him to my darling, and while they were dancing, my friend stole my sweetheart from me. An old country song. And I said, yeah, I know that one. He said, well, my wife and I got married 55 years ago or something. And she said, that was our wedding dance. So here I am in the middle of just full-blown nihilism, just hating everything, you know what I mean? pissed off at everybody, you know, just destroying everything I touch, you know, alienating everybody I come near. And I start playing this song, and these two people go into the middle of the floor of this barn, and they start to dance, and they're transformed. And they're 18 years old or 19 years old, and they're like in their first wedding dance. And that was when I got my answer, which is, this is what you were given, and this is all it is. This is what's underneath all the rich rock stars and the money and the record companies and the supersonic jet flights and the, you know, platinum, golden, this and that. He said, it's this little thing that really has nothing to do with that, but this is what it is, and this is what you have, and it's all that you have. So do you want it or don't you? You know. And at that moment, you know, my life began to turn around.
Man, that puts hairs on the arm. That's an awesome story. That's a good one, man. And then you started to enjoy music more than you ever had before?
Well, I started, you know, playing guitar, you know, which they never let me do in my original band, in fact. And I learned that lesson: if you're going to suck out of town. So I went up to, you know, learn to play guitar, don't do it, you know.
That's a great lesson. Suck out of town. All right. So you're sucking in a place that's not.
I'm getting better. You know what I mean? That's the whole thing. Is, you know, you got to find a place to play, and then I'm trying to think of what I did. I did a couple things. I started playing by myself solo. I was always writing, and then I called the members in FAT, which I'd been alienated from, and mended some fences, and we put FAT back together with the help of Ronnie Hurst, the drummer from Steppenwolf, who's out on the West Coast now, but he helped with that process, and we started doing 1 or 2 gigs a year, which brought a lot of people back out of the woodwork, you know. And then I put together when I was in Nashville. Actually, this is before this. No, I'm sorry, I've got that time sequence out.
No problem.
I started playing. I put together a couple of little bands, and then I ended up getting married, and I went down to Mississippi, and New Orleans, and Louisiana, and then I've always loved the South. I have some political issues or differences, I think, with some of my friends down there, but it's been a very musical place for me. And then I came back up to Nashville, and that's where I worked in the songwriting business there. I had a record deal with Vince Gill's management down there, and I got Hank Jr. cut a tune of mine, you know, and I gradually got my confidence back and found myself in the midst of just the music. And then I got this really good job, which gave me some money, you know, to just to have a little bit of a cushion. And my plan was always to have some for retirement, and then have some to go back and just play some music. That was the hardest thing, was during that period of time lowering the bar on. You know, we talked about time giving you the opportunity to use your own level of excellence as the bar. Not does it make some guy happy that thinks he can sell records, or somebody that's had a few beers somewhere, but does it live up to your standard? Is it as good as you want it to be? And you know, that takes time, but it's great to have that. It's kind of great to it's great to have that space where nobody's paying attention to really, and to use that time to perfect what you do. And then I ended up moving back here. And when I moved back here, I put FAT back together again. And because I like to say, we didn't make enough money to kill ourselves. everybody.
Man, how many years after that is? What is that? 15 years?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So well, no, this was even more. This was like 20 maybe.
A literal new beginning.
Yeah, but so we put back Fat together, and don't ask me what the numbers are. But I mean, I got those guys. So those guys went down to the West Indies and did some work down there, and I put together like a band to do my rock stuff, and then I have a trio that I do some lounge work with, and I forget what the question was, but it was a gradual process, but it was finding, it was first of all understanding, what was broken or what was wrong, and what was making me feel. I mean, one of the things, the glaring things as I write this story is, okay, it's a heartbreaker, you know what I mean? To get that close to success and lose it, and work that hard for success and lose it. But my God, look at the business world. Look at the music world. Look at the sports world. I mean, how many stories are there? It's the end of the world to you, but it's happened. You're not the first person it happened to, and it's not like you're gonna, you're dying of thirst or you got your leg shut off in a war or something like that. This is not. But for me, it was the end of the world, and I had to figure out why. And then I finally figured that out and filled in that gap. And understood, I think the first thing that I had to understand is, look, if you never played a guitar at all, or if you never play guitar again, that you still have value as a human being and as an individual. You are not what you do. You are who you are. And you don't need to impress somebody, you know what I mean? Or you don't need to do something that nobody else ever did, or something that someone's going to write a book about or make a TV show about to prove that you are a valuable part of the human race, And I just didn't have that together, and I took a while.
That's a huge psychological shift.
Yeah, took some therapy, and but which was mostly, and I've been really lucky to have good counselors, but mostly what they did is they let me talk enough so I could figure that out. And then once. Then all of a sudden, I'm not playing out of. Well, they used to have this saying: he's playing from hunger. That's what they used to say, but it meant you're desperate to get attention, and that all of a sudden that goes away, and then I'm approaching my art, my creativity from a much more holistic, well-rounded, connected, organic sense, instead of this. It's almost like fight or flight thing, you know what I mean? It's almost like you're doing it simply to survive. And, like I said, there's a lot of energy in that. And it works, but it didn't work for me.
It might not be as, what type of process would you go through when you would create? Because I know the last time we talked, you talked to me about how you just let the music flow. Like the lyrics, it's got to flow. It's got to be from the heart, and that's what it is. Like, how do you extract that from your heart? Do you put yourself in a mindset? Or?
No, I think for me, you're like I'm like a radio, and remember the old radios when you had to tune them in?
Barely.
You don't. Well, yeah, you have to zero it in on the proper frequency. And that I need to be in tune, I need to be, I don't know if I would say I need to be living right, because sometimes you have some pretty funky ideas. But I mean, no, I'm saying sometimes I have scary ideas that I write about, so it's not all about being angelic or anything like that. It's just being, well-grounded and paying attention, I think most. And really that's kind of what it is. And knowing when it's coming, and recognizing it when it's there, to go, wait a minute, stop. And sometimes one of the things that I find is, I've always had those mornings or those nights. Sometimes it's a full moon, sometimes it's not. Where all of a sudden you're just laying in bed, You don't know what it is. Nothing's changed from what you've done for the last, however long, but you just can't sleep. And what I've understood, for me, sometimes, is that's an alpha state of sorts. And oftentimes, there's an energy there to where I'll just lay in bed and I'll take a song that's not finished or I've been working on or I've been stuck on, and stuff just comes out. Stuff just moves very quickly. Sometimes things come out almost complete. So I just have learned, first of all, to let go of some of the control of that process. Like, look what I did. So I wrote, one of the songs that this novel is based around is about this old man. And it was after he died, and after I learned what had happened to him during his life, and I was sitting in my writing room. He loved trains, and that's a whole other story. And a train went by in the rain, and I was sitting at my piano, and this song came out complete, in one piece. And when I got up, half hour later, it was written. And so you have to be able to receive that. And I think part of that is to go, well, look what I did. I knew to put this word here, and then that word came after here, and then but not to take yourself, not for me, not to take myself so seriously and all that, and understand that at best, sure, I got to work hard at it. Don't get me wrong, but a lot of that is finished carpentry. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of, once again, will is a powerful thing, and it drives. I mean, these days it's the order of the day. Human will. For me, not so much. For me, I have to let go of some of that control, because I find when I do, I'm given access to things beyond my ability. It's really difficult. People ask me to give like writer retreats and stuff. And I say, I don't really know if you want me talking to these kids. I got some pretty strange ideas. But it's and the other thing is it has to be based on emotion. And usually that's what happens is, most of the time I get one piece of it, but it's usually based on a feeling. And then gradually, then I'll work my way through it. And some of it is just hammer and nail, one board at a time. But a lot of it, I truly have to believe it's part of that gift. And then I think part of that message I received that day was, you have to honor and respect that gift and just kind of watch it. See what it can give you. You know what I mean? Let it give you. Don't say, I want to do, now that I know the title of this song, I know exactly how I'm going to do this. What did Bob Dylan say? Bob Dylan said, it's like one of those train sets you have. So if you, in the train, you have you have the locomotive, and the locomotive goes around, up and down, it comes back through the tunnel, and it's got two more cars attached to it. Every time it goes through my brain, there's a little more of the song on it. And, that's sort of the approach that I take.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, you're letting go of who your ego maybe.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. And it's like bringing you back to those days, like 11, 12 years old, where your mom wanted you to be a priest.
Absolutely.
And putting you in front of,
right.
It's almost like a religious experience.
Yeah.
But maybe not the religious maybe that I would think it is.
But it's highly spiritual. So I would disagree. I would agree. It's like all the stuff that they were talking there. I differentiate between, ideology and institutions, and dogma and spirituality. They're two totally different things to me.
Absolutely.
And spirituality is a ethereal, abstract, and it has everything to do with my life and my writing. It really does. And that's probably the best way it's probably the best way to explain it, although we live in such a charged environment. I often think about standing in front of a group of people and saying the word God, and you'll see halos on some heads and mushroom clouds on others. It's simply, we've charged these words so much that we can't really even have a conversation with them anymore.
Absolutely.
Without being drawn to it like a magnet. You said God, that means that you want to do this, or you said holiday and not Christmas, so that means you want to do that. And I'm going, so I do my best to just separate myself from all that, because that's all human. Those are human institutions, human organizations, human groups, human interactions. And I'm human. I know how screwed up a human can be. So, yeah, but in a better world, spiritual is a very integral part in my creative process.
Yeah. What would you tell yourself looking back when you were 11 years old, if you could talk to yourself right now? Yourself now, going back 11 years old, you got a second to say something, you say it.
I have a hard time with that because I love where I am right now. So it's tricky to say, well, if you didn't do that, right? Now, for example, if I knew a few other things and we could have had a record deal, if someone gave me $5 million when I was 22, I'd probably be dead. Because I'm just that type. I was talking to my wife about my favorite deadly sins. You know what I mean? It's like I'm ruled by my appetites.
Yeah.
And I know people like me who got it and I didn't. So I guess, the biggest thing would be just to believe in yourself. You know what I mean? To believe in yourself and know how to take, and for all those empaths out there, it's good to be empathetic, but learn how to take care of yourself in balance, to have some empathy for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Peter, this has been awesome.
It's been great, Greg.
Before leaving, I want you to reflect on the life lessons that Peter brought us here today. Are there things that you can implement into your world that can make you and the people around you a little more happier and a little bit more fulfilled, in the hopes of creating an environment that is friendlier, more enjoyable, and more inspired? I love you all. Thank you very much, Peter, for being here. Till next time.